Hi, this is Billie Jean King.
I'm Mats Wilander.
This is Mary Carrillo.
This is Pam Shriver.
This is Yannick Noah, and you're listening to the Tennis Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Tennis Podcast, where we are live from Wimbledon for the first time in 2024. This is the first of 19 live shows that we have coming up for you over the next 17 days. This is the first of 3 preview shows live on site. Then we will be starting live from Monday at the close of play. And of course, we have our preview shows ahead of both the men's and women's final in 2.5 weeks' time. It feels a long way away. It's going to come around very quickly. But yeah, we are super excited to be here. We're back in our usual spot. We are overlooking Court 18 there just behind us. We have Court 1 in the background. We have Henman Hill over there. We have Centre Court over there. We have cameraman Matthew behind the camera, pretending to look shy. But he loves it, really. It's an absolute thrill to be back, isn't it? David, how are you doing?
It is. Can't believe our luck, to be honest. We've been walking around what is a mostly deserted Wimbledon for the last couple of days, just going into every nook and cranny that we're allowed to get into before the crowds come in, and it's been a treat.
Yeah, hello to everybody that's with us live and that is in the live chat. Hello to Hannah that is keeping everybody company in the chat. It is a fun place to be.
Yeah, the only bad thing about doing the live show is we don't get to hang out with Hannah in the chat, because that is great.
Speak for yourself. I have got it up here in front of me, but I'm going to try. I'm going to try not to be distracted.
Focus on us.
Got to, interact with people. We are YouTubers now, and that means asking you to like and subscribe. I've got a mental note. It's in my head all the time. Tell people to like and subscribe. That's what YouTubers do. That is what David's 12-year-old son is telling us that we need to demand of our viewers. So please do that for us.
He says, smash that like button.
Smash that.
Right.
It feels a bit aggressive.
Yeah.
I'm trying to tone down the language a bit, but maybe I'll build up to that. Today was draw day, otherwise known as Christmas for Matt Roberts. So that's what we're going to be talking about in due course. But first, I want to talk to you about what I'm wearing. Folks, I have loved all of our sponsors over our time as the Tennis Podcast. I really have. They are all an integral part of the Tennis Podcast family, and we thank them all very much for their service and for helping us be the podcast that we are today. I've never loved a sponsor more than the people that took me to the number 1 court Wimbledon shop today, newly refurbished. It was a lock-in for the Tennis Podcast, and they gave me my new favourite jumper. I am truly thrilled. It's all just great, isn't it?
Oh, it's fantastic. We did a little supermarket sweep and got kitted out, and we're very, very grateful for that. And we're very pleased with what we're wearing. Yeah,
David and I ended up with the same shirt. So the Wimbledon shop are such great designers. They've managed to design something that suits both me and David. Yeah. So make of that what you will.
You can decide over the course of the fortnight who wore it better. Actually, don't do that, because I want to win, and I won't win that. But yes, the Oxford lilac shirt that I'm becoming very fond of already. We
came in podcasters, we're leaving fashion models. What is going on in the world? I completely misjudged the temperature today, so absolutely thrilled to have been provided with a blanket to cover my bare legs. So the details of the shop are on the screen, shop.wimbledon.com. If you want to own a strawberry jumper, and quite frankly, why wouldn't you? I feel like a new person since I put it on. Right, let's talk draw. Happy Christmas, Matt Roberts.
Thank you. And I mean, if I had to rate draw day, look, I don't think it was the best Grand Slam draw ever. I think interesting comparison to Roland Garros, which, we were just at that a few weeks ago, and that stayed with you for a long time because of the draw that came out, which was Rafael Nadal against Alexander Zverev. Like, everyone gasped when that came out. There were very few gasps today at the draw. There's not that many like amazing first round draws, but it was the Wimbledon draw, so I still had a very good time. I likened it earlier to like an average Fulham game that I would enjoy very much, but would definitely be last on match of the day. It was those sort of vibes. I had a great time. There was a small hiccup with the draw, which we do have to mention.
It was almost like they knew it was a really boring draw. Like let's throw them a bone.
Let's do something.
Yeah.
So Haddad Maier's name was read out, and Mira Andreeva's name appeared electronically on the screen, and then they were all out of sync for a while. I thought we were going to be in a having to redo the draw situation, which might have been quite fun, but they did actually rescue it very, very well, and in the end, we got there.
They did. I'll tell you who you want around in a crisis, and that is assistant referee Phil Evans, who really he had the backup stuff going on, which meant that he was able to just totally reassure everybody in the room that we weren't in an emergency situation, and it was just a tech hiccup. His was the sort of voice that you wanted, coming over the public address system when you're in turbulence on a flight. Put your seatbelt on, but everything's fine. That was how I felt about Phil. So well done, Phil, and well done, Denise Parnell, the first ever female referee at Wimbledon, doing the draw for the first time today. Yeah. So well done, Denise. Matt, when quizzed about the draw yesterday, you said your eyes were most firmly fixed on Iga Swiatek, the top seed, the women's world number one, and what her draw would end up looking like, what her projected draw would end up looking like. I think actually what's happened is Swiatek's draw across the men's and the women's of any of the top seeds is probably the most interesting, I would say.
Yeah, I think I would agree. I think it would have been an interesting draw anyway, just because we haven't seen Iga Swiatek on the grass yet. She comes into Wimbledon on I think it's a 19-match winning streak that she's on currently, and yet how is she going to adapt to the grass? So it was going to be interesting regardless of the names that came out with her, but the names that have come out make it really interesting. I mean, straight away, Sofia Kenin, first round, a repeat of the first round from the Australian Open this year, which Swiatek won in 2 sets, but the first set was a tie break. And, Kenin has just been a player over the last year or so who has not been consistent at all. She's had a string of poor results, but then occasionally she has popped up and had a big win. I'm thinking here last year against Coco Gauff. She beat Ons Jabeur in Rome recently. She beat Caroline Garcia at the French Open and got to the third round there. So there have been little signs. She did lose in qualifying on the grass last week, won and loved to Golubic, and ended up getting in as a lucky loser, which I think speaks to that inconsistency that I'm talking about.
Doesn't look great, that won and loved to Golubic, does it?
I think it looks great for Iga Swiatek. But look, it's a dangerous name, and they continue. Putintseva is in there, has just won a title on the grass. Actually, Kerber is in there. Siniakova has won a title on grass before, and that is before you get to the real name in Iga Swiatek's section, which is Jelena Ostapenko, who has beaten Swiatek 4 times out of 4 and is a potential 4th round opponent.
4 times out of 4, she's a danger, more than a danger really. She's a massive problem for Swiatek on any surface. Probably most so on grass though, David. This is look, the question is whether Ostapenko gets there really, but if she does, that is a big problem for Iga Swiatek.
Yeah, I think it is a big question mark over whether she gets there, because she's got Ajla Tomljanovic as Ostapenko in the first round, which is...
We will be talking about that. That will be getting a moment of focus in due course. Yeah.
But, you never know what she's going to throw at you, and it can sometimes be an absolute dud from Ostapenko. She can just really disappoint, but
less so this year though. She has got some consistency together.
She did at the start of the season. Okay. I think it's tailed off.
The thing is, I'd be fascinated to ask her. I think she will know that draw, and that she will be
Ostapenko,
super motivated to get there and have another crack at her.
Is this going to be another David goes into a press conference and reveals a draw to a player,
gets told off,
or pivots and comes up with a totally new question on the spot?
I will certainly be broaching the subject, put it that way, just seeing. And I don't think Ostapenko's the sort that's going to mind in the slightest. I think she could tell you she's going to play in the final.
I agree with you about that. Yeah.
But I won't forget what she did to her at the US Open in particular, because we came into that event and I think Swiatek, I pretty much say that she's the favourite every time we have one of these tournaments, well, no matter where it is, even Wimbledon. We'll wait and see over the next couple of days whether I go with that or not, because I think I've got to have a proper look at this draw, because this is as tough a draw on paper as I think you could get. And the way Ostapenko smashed her off the court that day, there was nothing that Swiatek could do. I don't know whether there's anything she could do now as a player who's 9 months further along and who I think is playing considerably better and looks more in control of her serve and more in control of how she moves an opponent. I actually find it one of the most interesting moments in tennis at this point to see what she can do about it against these big hitters, and she's going to have a fill of them over this 2 weeks, I think.
The problem is the big hitters rush her. They make her swings, particularly on her forehand, which is her biggest weapon, they make that swing look really big, and that's going to be most exaggerated on grass, isn't it?
Yeah, because I do think Swiatek has got better at playing these types of players. I think she's constantly improving, but she's not going to just have to contend with those players. She's going to have to contend with the grass beneath her feet, which will just, I think, make her a little bit less sure of herself and certain than she normally is. So, look, I would absolutely love to see that matchup and these matchups generally. It's a fascinating part of the draw.
Kenin in round one, probably Yulia Putintseva or Angelique Kerber in round three, Ostapenko round four, Danielle Collins or Marketa Vondrousova projected to be quarterfinals, and she's come out in the same half as Swiatek is Jelena Rebakina, and I feel like we are always looking ahead to a projected Swiatek Rebakina semi-final. They do seem to come out in the same half as one another, and we've been denied it so many times. Are we going to get it this time, David?
I don't feel particularly confident that we will. I certainly feel less confident about it than any other tournament that we've had in recent memory at this level, Grand Slam level. Two reasons. One, Swiatek has never been beyond the quarterfinals of this tournament, so you're asking her to do something she's never done before. I still say on balance I think she will do that. I still think she will end up in the semi-finals.
You think she's a more reliable bet to get there than former champion Rebakina?
I do feel that, because the question marks over Rebakina at the moment. She is struggling to get through tournaments at all physically. Illness has struck a number of times. There was her decision not to play Eastbourne at the last second, and we got word that it was just a change of schedule, which I didn't completely understand. But it's one of so many examples in the last 6 to 8 months of either injury or illness or something derailing her. I think Rebakina is probably the most natural grass court player in this draw. She is even more equipped than, say, an Ons Jabeur, I think, because she has the weapons to go with that style on the surface, and she's certainly better equipped at the moment than Swiatek. But I don't trust her physicality at the moment. I feel for her that she seems to be going through a rotten time, but no, I'm not. I don't think she's going to reach the semis.
And I think the big learning from Paris is that you can think that Rebakina's fine. We went into Paris with a lot of concerns about her health, and then she looked, okay, maybe not absolutely peak physical condition in the first few rounds, but fine. We weren't worried about it. And then suddenly it sort of cropped up again in the second week. So I think we're just sort of on Rebakina watch round by round at the moment. What
we've been guilty of doing recently is sort of circling her as a unknown ahead of the draw, being on Rebakina watch in the opening round, her then putting in a great performance in the opening round, and then us going, okay, she's fine, she's going to be fine. But actually, exactly as you say, we need to be keeping an eye on her round by round. More than anything with Rebakina, I just hope she's okay. I worry about all these health concerns. I really hope on a human level that she is okay. Breakneck segue from that into Tomljanovic against Ostapenko. This wasn't an ooh la la gasp-inducing moment in the draw room because it's kind of so niche.
Was in our little row.
It's kind of too niche to have got a gasp from even a room full of tennis journalists. But if you know, this is the one.
What were the highlights
Isn't it?
of it? 2 or 3 years ago here.
Yeah, it was a match in 2021. Tomljanovic was 4-love up in the decider, and Ostapenko took a medical timeout.
Okay.
And Tomljanovic said it was clear gamesmanship. Tomljanovic said she can tell when someone's actually injured, and she called it disgraceful behaviour from a Grand Slam champion who should be a role model. And Ostapenko called Tomljanovic disrespectful for those comments and said, quote from Ostapenko, if I'd been even 50%, I would have beaten her. Now I have to say,
Right in
like,
the sweet spot.
it was absolute aggro sweet spot at the time.
Didn't she say everybody knows she's lying?
Yeah. just
Right in her face.
just
Yeah.
terrific. They have slightly rode back from it.
Yeah,
They've played since.
they've boringed it
and-
up, yeah.
And there wasn't any, but I hope that the memories of Wimbledon bring it back. And please, the people who make the order of play, please put that back on. I think it was court 14 that it was last time.
Which is just
Like,
over
you've
there.
got it, it's
and
got
we
to
would
be there.
have a fantastic view of it from
You
up
want
here.
the
It would all be
organisers to troll the
chef's
players.
kiss.
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
Okay, there you go, Denise Parnell. There's your second job.
Yeah. Oh, that's look, as we said at the top, that it's not a draw full of juicy round one
No.
matches. It's a draw that promises a lot for week 2, and of course there will be surprises. There'll be matches that we aren't expecting to be anything that turn into barn burners, but on paper, which is what the draw is at the moment, there wasn't a whole lot to get your teeth into in terms of round ones, but that was one. Putintseva against Kerber, of course, I mentioned that. Caroline Wozniacki against Alicia Parks, who qualified yesterday. Alicia Parks.
And Parks is suddenly on a winning streak, having been on a terrible losing streak. I think she won an ITF and then qualified, so 3 wins there. And her game should make sense on grass.
yeah.
Really should.
I think last year when we started watching her, we were circling her as a player that she should be a factor on grass in the years to come. And then because it hasn't gone so well recently, we've slightly forgotten about her. But to come through qualifying is a big statement, I think.
And barely lost games in qualifying.
Yeah.
Really dominant scores.
Yeah, and Wozniacki's never been hugely comfortable on
No.
grass. She's never made any waves at Wimbledon, really, even in her heyday. So that's an interesting one. Paula Badosa against Karolina Mukova. Mukova, fingers crossed that wrist was a precautionary withdrawal in Eastbourne. And Sloane Stephens against Victoria Azarenka. Is that a round 1?
Yes.
Yeah, it is a round 1. That's fun.
Yeah, and I think
mean,
the
it's a bit
winner
kind of partying like it's 5 years ago fun, but it's fun. I'm looking for fun in this draw.
I can give you more.
Oh, yes, please.
Well, potentially. The winner of that plays Pliskova or Schneider.
Oh, Schneider, who's in the final in Bad Homburg. Of course, Schneider's finally happening.
Excellent.
She
Big
might
moment for you.
actually be happening. She's happening with a lot of strapping on her leg, which is a concern. But I still very much believe in Diana Schneider.
And Naomi Osaka is in that little section as well. It is a loaded section in terms of, big names and, former Grand Slam finalists and champions. And Osaka plays Diane Parry in the first round, which I think is interesting.
Yeah, she doesn't mind the grass, Diane Parry, does she? Had a few wins in Nottingham.
And you'd think, that slice can stay low and maybe diffuse some of Osaka's power a little bit. But, given Osaka could have got anyone, I don't think she's in the worst section there.
When you go through that section, I end up thinking, this draw's great. But that really was one of the only sections, wasn't
That's
it?
where the fun is,
Yeah.
for sure. In the bottom half of the draw, we have Arina Sabalenka and Coco Gauff. They would be scheduled to meet in the semi-finals. Sabalenka, I was busy writing notes in the draw, and one of the first notes I wrote was great draw for Sabalenka. And it is, except for a potential round 2 against Donna Vekic, who's in the final in Bad Homburg and really has played great tennis to get there. It's very comfortable on grass, likes Wimbledon, and has a 6-2 head-to-head against Sabalenka.
And beat her in Dubai this year. That was a 6-love final set. And crucially, a 6-2 head-to-head, but also a 2-1 head-to-head in the Pam Shriver era, we have to break Donovecic's career up into eras, and there's BP before Pam, and there's the current era, which is the Pam Shriver era, and she has beaten Sabalenka twice since they started working together. It should be said, Sabalenka did win, their kind of biggest match in that time at the Australian Open in the quarterfinals. So I was right there with you. I was thinking, wow, this is a great section for Sabalenka, because the seeds that she's with, like Zheng Qinwen, Maria Sakkari, Daria Kasatkina, I think they're kind of the seeds. Look, I know Kasatkina's doing very well at the moment, but
Sabalenka eats her for breakfast.
She loves that matchup.
A great centre court match, that, wouldn't it, as a second round?
Exactly. So it was looking like a good draw, but then Vekic comes out, and suddenly that's a totally different look at Sabalenka's draw. I mean, obviously Vekic is going to be tough, playing Monday as she will here. Like, she's playing in the final tomorrow. That's a quick turnaround. Like, there's no guarantee Vekic gets there, but if she does, we've got a hell of a second round match on our hands.
Coco Gauff starts against countrywoman Caroline Dollarhide. Do we like Gauff's draw? Do we think Gauff Sabalenka is happening?
I think it is. I really like Gauff's draw. She's in that section that we spoke about earlier with Azarenka and Stevens and Pliskova and Osaka, but she wouldn't meet them until the fourth round. I think there's a Sorana Castella lurking, who's always a bit dangerous, I think. But generally, I like Gauff's draw, and I'm quite big on Gauff.
I am too. I definitely think I'd be amazed if she doesn't get through to face whoever comes out of that section. But whoever does come out of that section is going to be playing some serious tennis. And if it was Naomi Osaka, I would love to see that. Osaka Gauff, with Osaka having won a few matches on grass finally at Wimbledon and really hitting the straps. And I don't think it's far away. I don't think her form is that far away. That having been said, looking at that lineup, I'd still go Gauff to be going to the semis at least.
Yeah. I haven't done my predictions yet. I'm going to give myself a couple of days and let myself get totally led astray by what people say at Media Day tomorrow.
Always a Grand Slam
But
tradition.
I've got a feeling I'm going to end up picking Coco Gauff.
For the whole thing?
For the whole thing, yeah.
Didn't you pick her the other day?
I think I tentatively said I'm big on Gauff or something like that, but
if you're going to go big, you just got to come out with it.
Yeah, no, you're right. I think, look, Gauff Sabalenka potential semi-final. Look, they split their recent meetings at Slams, didn't they? Gauff won at the US Open, Sabalenka won in Australia. I think I like the way Gauff can just cause Sabalenka to malfunction a little bit in that matchup. Use her athleticism, use her legs. Yeah, I could see myself doing a big Gauff prediction.
A couple of other women's draw elements that I wanted to touch upon before we move on to the men's. Emma Raducanu starting against Ekaterina Alexandrova. Is there any world in which that's a good thing, because she's a massive underdog? It's kind of a free hit for her. Nobody should be realistically expecting her to win that match. Alexandrova is not only a good player in the 22nd seed or something like that, but really likes grass, and has won Berlin a couple of times, I think, and played well on grass this year.
Yeah, I mean, look, when you look at their respective rankings and how little Raducanu has played, you should be looking at it on paper, in theory, as her being the heavy underdog. And yet, actually, when you know the history of her as a player and what she's done, where she's playing here in the UK, on grass, something she likes, place she's played well at, to me it's 50-50, even on paper. And I think it's a tough draw for both, but particularly for Raducanu, I do think it's an opportunity, because if she wins, she gets that player's, Alexandrova's draw, effectively, and that would probably help her too. I don't think Raducanu's too far away from having a win and going on a run, because she's that sort of player. But it's a tough first round.
Yeah. It's one of those where the first round is kind of the toughest match, I think, of the ones that then might follow. If she can get through that first round, it's the Sakkari section. It's the Zheng Qinwen section, who, I know obviously, Zheng Qinwen has reached the Grand Slam final this year. She's a quality player, but I do think that there's an opportunity there for Raducanu, but it is a tough first round. It really is. Alexandrova, big flat hitter of the ball, likes the grass, and can kind of kill the crowd a little bit. Like, she's not going to give the crowd anything to.
She'll suck the air out of the room. She will.
She's not going to do an Ostapenko.
She certainly can.
Yeah. She's not going to turn around and look at the line calls.
Yeah, she'll just be in her own zone, doing her thing, blocking everything out. And look, of course, Emma Raducanu has a chance. I'm a big believer in her and her talent. I just think right at this moment, Alexandrova is the favourite for that match and should be treated as such.
And I didn't actually see Raducanu's match yesterday against Kasatkina, but it did sound like suddenly the conditions were quite different in
windy
Eastbourne, and suddenly very windy. And it seems like maybe she didn't cope all that well in those conditions. But she's been playing pretty well on the grass, and if she can bring that level that we've seen in the last couple of weeks, I think I agree with David. I think it's tight. And
I suspect she'll be on a court rather more sheltered than the centre court at Eastbourne. That'll be centre or one. But actually, very interesting what they do with that. Whether they want to give Raducanu the centre court billing. It's putting extra pressure on her shoulders. She might not want that, or maybe she absolutely wants that. I don't know.
I think she'll take what she's given happily either way at this stage. I think.
But what would she prefer? Do you think? Does she want to be the main event?
I think she probably would. Walk out with a real swagger, and like the stage. I think it's a couple of years on since she came here as the US Open champion, when she had to be the centre stage all the time, and obviously a year further on from when she found it all a bit overwhelming at the end. But remember those first 2 or 3 rounds, how well she played with the spotlight on her, beating Sorana Castella and beating really good players, and just whether she can be as free as that, who knows. But I think that she will play well. I do think she will rise to the occasion. I think she loves all this, and I'm expecting her to beat Alexandrova. I think she's going to come out and get through that.
David doing his bit to dampen the Great British hype train.
I might change my mind in 3 days'
I was trying to take the pressure off her shoulders, David.
David's like, put her on centre court. She's going to win.
Heaped it back on. The last person I just wanted to talk about in the women's draw, because I totally glossed over her earlier and only talked about her in the context of Świątek's draw, was the defending champion, Marketa Vondrousova. Now, the reason I kind of shied away from spotlighting her is because I don't know if she's fit. I don't know if she's... I mean, of course, if she's the player she was here last year, she's a contender for this title. But I don't know if she is. Like, I just have no idea what to expect from her at all, which is our standard place to be with Marketa Vondrousova.
Yes, absolutely. And hasn't she got something like a 50-50 win-loss record on grass? Like, so many of her grass court wins were here last year. She's still kind of inexperienced on the surface. Like, we know she can play well on it, but like, as you say, like her run to the Roland Garros final hasn't led to her always doing well at Roland Garros. So I don't think she's always going to do well at Wimbledon just because she won it. She's capable, but big unknown in terms of her injury. I think she's not due to come to press until Sunday.
Yes, we just had the press names through for tomorrow. Most are coming tomorrow. I think Andy Murray is Sunday. Marketa Vondrousova is Sunday. Those are the big... There were always stragglers these days. Media Day is actually media weekend. It's falsely advertised. But there are plenty coming through the gates tomorrow.
It is quite funny how she's ended up in this section with Danielle Collins again. Because that was the same at the French Open. We were all circling a potential Swiatek-Collins quarterfinal, and we said, Vondrousova says hi, she'll probably get in there and get through, and she did. And there she is again in that section with Danielle Collins, who I'm intrigued by as well.
No idea what to expect there from her. Her penultimate Grand Slam.
Hard to believe, isn't it?
And it's amazing how quickly it can feel like you can just lose a bit of momentum in tennis. Like, it really wasn't that long ago that she was the form player.
We were like,
on the tour.
Danielle Collins is in the big four. She was briefly.
But you would think she would feel a bit fresher now, having had a slightly quieter time. I mean, she was on fumes really at the French Open, wasn't she?
But has never loved it here.
No.
And I do wonder, like, the Olympics is such a big deal for her. Like, obviously there is room to be focused on both. I think Novak Djokovic is going to be evidence of that, but it's such a big thing for her. It's been such a big goal. I do wonder if for her that might take away, but I don't know.
And Clara Towson is a tough draw, really, in the first round. I mean, you never really know which Towson you're going to get, but when she hits...
You know that better than anyone.
Yes. I've lost plenty of points in the predictions going on Clara Towson, but on a day, dangerous.
Yeah, there's just not that many days, are there? Yeah. Right, on to the men's draw, where there were kind of even fewer ooh-la-la moments than in the women's draw. If any of the top seeds, I think, have an interesting draw in the men's, it is the top seed, I think, Jannik Sinner. He's come out in Carlos Alcaraz's half again, so they would be scheduled to meet in the semi-finals. Novak Djokovic and Alexander Zverev, the top four seeds, in the bottom half of the draw. So Jannik Sinner starts against Yannick Hanfmann. His scheduled quarter-final opponent would be Daniil Medvedev. His fourth-round opponent would be Ben Shelton, although we watched him lose to Paul Jubb last night. We very briefly thought Paul Jubb might be the best tennis player in the world, and he still might be, but he did just lose to Sebastian Offner.
So, it's a great hour there, wasn't it?
We don't know where we are with Paul Jubb.
That final set was electric.
He's some talent.
I'd happily go and watch that again now.
But I think the big one for Jannik Sinner's draw is a potential second-round meeting with Matteo Berrettini.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's the big headline from the men's draw, really. They've only played once before, and that was last year, and Sinner won pretty straightforwardly in Canada. But if there's anywhere that Berrettini's going to beat Sinner, feels like it would be on grass and potentially at Wimbledon. I am backing Sinner, though. Like, I was so impressed with him in Halle. Like, look at how he dealt with Hubert Hurkacz. Like, a kind of similar... I could imagine that being a similar sort of match, like it being tight, it being close, tie breaks involved, but Sinner just playing those big points well. And Berrettini tends to, he has a ceiling. He beats the players he should beat at slams. He's been incredibly reliable and consistent, when he's been fit at slams. There was a period of time where he was kind of only losing to Djokovic or Nadal. Well, right now, Sinner's form, I'd kind of put him in that category that's just a level above kind of what Berrettini's got. Like, he's got a weakness, Berrettini, and Sinner is so good that he can pick on it, I think. And I'm very excited for it. I think it could be brilliant. Berrettini, I'm not underestimating him. Like, I know he's a great grass court player, but I do think Sinner starts, to me, as still quite a strong favourite.
Okay, so Matt's dampened that fun. David, you're the guy that got extremely high on Matteo Berrettini here 12 months ago.
Round by round.
Sitting here is actually bringing it all back.
Yeah.
Can you make a case for Berrettini?
Sure.
Against Sinner? I mean, don't if you don't believe in it.
No, listen. Last year, I think it was after he dispatched Alex de Minaur and Alexander Zverev back-to-back in straight sets. Those are not nothing results, and this is a guy who'd reached the final, taken a set off Novak Djokovic. He's got the grass court goods, and he's done it at Wimbledon. But is he that player anymore? I think that is a big question mark. I still really like Matteo Berrettini. I still rate him. He's the guy who won Queens twice. He's shown up so many times on grass. I mean, he ended up running into Carlos Alcaraz, who just played him off the court that day. But overall, I think Sinner will have too much for him as well, and I also think that it'll end up being the perfect draw for Sinner, because as perilous as it might be on paper, and it might end up being a bit of a tense few hours for him, talk about playing yourself into form. And nobody else in that section's going to worry him after playing Matteo Berrettini, I don't think. And it might be the difference maker for him for going on a run to the whole thing.
Did you just say the whole thing, David?
Yeah, the title. I mean, he could do. He's the world number one. I mean, I'm not picking that yet. I've got a few days to make my mind up.
Here he
but
goes.
I believe strongly that if he were to win that, I think he is more likely to win the title than if he'd have played somebody with less threat in the second round and just have a very serene time.
By stark contrast, I think Carlos Alcaraz has a great draw through to that projected semi-final with Jannik Sinner, right? I mean, I circled the potential fourth round with Ugo and Bear, which should be tricky, but Ugo and Bear has not had a good grass court season. It's actually weird, and Bear, like, he used to not do that much throughout the year and then pop up on grass and look like a threat, and he's kind of done the opposite. It's like clay kind of came along and really derailed his season, didn't it? But apart from that,
honestly, I didn't even circle them Bear. I circled the one after that in the quarters, which is potentially Tommy Paul, Queen's champion, and has beaten Alcaraz twice. Now, both of those times were in Canada, but it's a 2-all head-to-head. He's just been one of those guys who has caused Alcaraz problems. I think he can kind of move with Alcaraz. He's not as fast, but he's incredibly athletic, Paul, and he can stay in rallies with him. And yeah, look, I think Paul's got a good draw to get there because he's landed in the Casper Ruud section.
Tommy Paul's got the best draw of the
early
day, hasn't he? Tommy Paul, best draw of the day? One of. Yeah, like Casper Ruud was the top 8 seed that you wanted. And Casper Ruud would admit that. Right. He might even be the first to admit that.
Yeah, look, I don't think Casper Ruud's draw is all that bad on paper, but I'm really not expecting
the draw isn't what's holding him back
is it? It's not. It's his total lack of engagement with the grass court season.
What fun London activities is he going to do instead of winning tennis matches this year?
Yeah, the weekend.
I'm honestly intrigued to find out.
Not on tour. Paul's got potentially Bublik in the third round, and Bublik's always a bit tricky, I suppose. But this is an opportunity for Paul. I think he needs to deliver on this, doesn't he? He's needs to make that quarterfinal.
In serious form. He's got a good draw. It's this is his window to do something.
Well, if he doesn't make it to Alcaraz, it's a disappointment for Tommy Paul. And I do feel like if he got to face Alcaraz, then Alcaraz has got to be bang on it because he asks all the questions that Alcaraz sometimes struggles with, I think. And if the mind goes, if the concentration, if he becomes that erratic player that he can sometimes be, then he's going to have problems against Tommy Paul. Just on going back to the Sinner draw, I remember when Alcaraz had the Berrettini, Holger Rune, Daniil Medvedev, Djokovic run to the title. That seemed just about as hard as you can get on paper, and it played him into form, and he was just awesome in the end, wasn't he? And I just think maybe that might happen for Sinner. And
I think it's a great point you make about getting a tough test early could set Sinner up, because that's exactly what he didn't have last year. If you remember, I was looking up whether there'd ever been an easier path through to the semis for Sinner. He faced nobody ranked high until he got to Novak Djokovic, and didn't play well in that match.
Yeah.
I know he felt that he was closer than the year before, but we were pretty disappointed in that performance. And look, he's proved himself absolutely since then. But I do think there is something in having a test early on if you can come through it. And there's obviously the danger of it, but it really could set Sinner up.
Does Novak Djokovic have a good draw overall? Because some people are saying it's the absolute dream draw for Novak Djokovic, and I do think that is probably the case for a couple of rounds. And I say that knowing full round, well, I could be wrong, because honestly, I know nothing about Vit Kopriva, who he plays in round one, other than that he's a qualifier and he's ranked 123 in the world. So look, he's just won 3 matches on grass, including a best of 5 set match yesterday. So he is not nothing. But again, on paper, opening couple of rounds for Djokovic look as cushy as you can get. But a possible round 3 with Luca Nardi, who's beaten him this year. Possible round 4 with Holger Rune, who also I know what on earth is going on with Holger Rune, who knows, but he has been tricky for Djokovic before, and a possible quarterfinal with Hubert Hurkacz. Like, in a draw where none of the top seeds, I don't think, have got a particularly tricky time of it. What do we think of that?
Well, I think the most important thing for Novak Djokovic is the first couple of rounds because of the question marks over his knee. And that's where he needs to get comfortable and find out what his limits are. And those limits may extend as he goes through this draw. He may find he's got a greater range of movement, that he can trust the surgery he's had more. And for him to have what looks on paper a dream first 2 rounds. There was a moment where when the draw was shown on the screens in the media room there, that they showed the respective records of these 2 players, and one guy's played and won 92 matches here and the other fella's never played one. And one's won the title goodness knows how many times, the other bloke's never been here before. Now that he might go and play the match of his life and knock out a substandard injured Novak Djokovic, but I think more likely Djokovic will be able to win that match without pushing the limits of his knee at this point, and probably in the second round as well. And then he's into the tournament. And if he doesn't have any setbacks, well, yes, there's tough players on the horizon for sure, but him at his best, he beats them all.
Yeah, I agree with David. I think those first few rounds felt the most crucial for Djokovic. I would say that if Holger Rune gets to the 4th round, I don't think that's like the first big test that Djokovic would want. Like, I think he'd be much more comfortable against sort of other players in that category. I think he'd be much more comfortable against a Taylor Fritz or a Rublev, guys who he's got their number. I think
Rune would test that knee,
and Rune shows up against Djokovic. He always has done. So
and it's one of those where if he gets there, it means that Rune I think could lose to anybody at any time, but if he gets to that round 4, he's already shown something by doing that.
Like to see that.
Yeah. Me too.
It kind of depends how you read draws. Some people read them and just focus on the first few rounds, and that's the key because, those are the first few matches. Some people look further ahead, and I do agree. Like, looking ahead, there were definitely easier seeds that Novak Djokovic could have been put in the draw alongside. But it does look like a very nice. I would extend it to the first 3 rounds. I think that's pretty good for Djokovic. I really do.
Okay, a couple of other players I want to draw attention to, and matches as well from the men's draw. Do you know who has a good draw? About as good as it could have been given seeding and ranking, etc. Jack Draper.
Who's he got?
Ema.
Elias Ema in round. I meant more kind of big picture than a specific takedown of Elias Ema, who was just qualified, and
but
qualifiers are tough. But
if they got to their respective seedings, it's Alexander Zverev 3rd round, right?
Yeah, it's the Zverev section, and then the kind of Tsitsipas, Rublev, Fritzy bit.
I do find that interesting, though, that you regard Zverev as a pretty good 3rd round draw
on grass. Yeah, I think I'd back Draper for that.
Interesting. I mean,
55-45 Draper maybe.
Certainly, in terms of the history of Zverev on the surface, he has failed to deliver on his seeding a lot of the time, and he certainly hasn't looked that comfortable. And even when I saw him in Halle the other week, I mean, he wasn't far off losing to Artifice. He didn't really get that close. Was it Hubert Hurkacz who beat him in the end there? His game doesn't seem to have the same pop on it on grass as it does on clay, for instance. He doesn't seem to just be as effective.
I suppose he can't really fall back on what he likes to do, which is to stand behind the baseline, kind of grind, and he's very good at that. We don't think it's necessarily the way he should play, but he does play that way a lot of the time. That's his comfort zone, and he can't really do that on the grass. So he's probably constantly outside of his comfort zone, I suppose, and he's never had a big run at Wimbledon, it's a big opportunity for Draper, for sure. Like, he's got to get there, like Ema, and then there's a potential sort of all British clash with Cameron Norrie in the second round. Look,
Cameron Norrie can't beat a barn door, hit a barn door. What are we doing to a barn door? Hit a barn door. He could probably hit a barn door. He might not be able to beat the barn door at the moment, anyway.
I guess there's the question mark of how Draper handles being the British guy. He's not been that before at Wimbledon, and I think he'll rise to it, but it's a bit of an unknown.
David's theory is he could really do with the England football team staying in the tournament and being a bit of a lightning rod for him.
Yeah.
Oh, so his hopes rest on figuring out that midfield.
Just to give him a little bit of a cloak to operate under whilst he finds his feet really here.
And I suppose if Murray does end up playing doubles, like...
I'm coming to Murray, Matt. I've left it to the end.
But you know what I mean? Like that would take a lot of the attention as well on like the sort of towards the latter half of the first week.
Okay, what's the over-under for Jack Draper at this tournament given his draw? What's par? What result is disappointing?
Look, if he loses to Alexander Zverev, I think it would be tough to say that's a bad loss. It'd be tough to like criticise that. Like,
but it's not progress.
It's not progress.
Yeah.
But it's not.
You could certainly say, oh well, it's Alexander Zverev. He's the fourth seed. He's a very good player. He's lost. Okay, but I don't think you'd be any more excited about him than you were a month ago.
Agreed.
And he is at the stage of his career right now. You know, new coach bump, all of that, where almost kind of progress is par, right? You expect progress.
Be interesting when we come to do the predictions and it's quarterfinals onwards that we are picking for, and Taylor Fritz could be a fourth round opponent, for instance. You know, and I feel like it's very easy to think, oh, Draper can beat Fritz, but Fritz doesn't throw in duds in early rounds very often
anymore.
No,
he's got better at that.
He often gets through to his seeding.
Will there be any Brits still in Wimbledon at the time that England go out of the football?
I mean, they might all be in because England might go out on Sunday.
That's why it's a great question, Matt.
That is a very good question. Can we have 24 hours?
When's England's next match? If we beat Slovakia,
I think Friday, Saturday.
So then
I think we have 6. We would have must maintain the conditional tense. I think we would have 6 days. I think it'd be the following Saturday.
Well, I struggle to see England going beyond that quarter-final in the football, personally.
Okay.
So
Britain will still have
players. That means Britain having players that reach the third round.
And I think Bolter is due to face Pegula in the third round.
Yes.
I believe that's that section of the draw. And I think Bolter and Draper are, I think, the surest bets, men and women, to get to the third round. And I think they both will.
I think Britain has somebody in the last 16 in the second week.
And the football?
I think that they'll be out by then. So, Britain will.
I can't believe the optimism of David Law doesn't stretch to one of the most gifted midfields in English history.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. We've arrived at Andy Murray via the depression of the England football team.
Nice segue.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Is it worth us talking about Andy Murray's draw? I guess is the question. Should I even mention it?
I mean, you can say who it is.
It's an interesting one.
It's Thomas Mahatch. In the match that won't happen, it's Andy Murray against Thomas Mahatch.
Best player in the world.
Not on grass, Matt. Not on grass.
I'm sure we can pick out one rally we get excited about.
I've put in brackets here in my notes, Hurkacz's section, as if that's relevant to anything.
There was a horrible moment. Like, it was on for far too long, the possibility of Hurkacz Murray. It was a possibility for way too long in the draw, but thankfully
he's scheduled to come to press on Sunday. The fact that he's come out in the bottom half of the draw, so the opposite half to Alcaraz, means he would play Tuesday, which buys him an extra day see where he's at and make up his mind. And I think he will take that day. Well, he's told us he intends to take that day. So I wouldn't expect any decisions from Andy Murray about whether he plays until Monday afternoon, evening, or maybe even Tuesday morning. But we haven't. The last news we have from him is the quotes that he gave yesterday morning, and they really sounded to me like he shouldn't be playing probably at all, or maybe even saying not shouldn't. I'm not. Do whatever you like, and I will support it, Andy. But it sounded to me like the longest of long shots.
Yeah.
So
I think the best player in the world will be facing a lucky loser.
Yeah, which could be terrible news for him, because there are some tricky lucky losers, as we discussed yesterday on our qualifying show. In terms of fun round one matches in the men's, it's a bit of a tough scene. I've had to pick out Francis Tiafoe against Matteo Arnaldi, although I find watching Tiafoe at the moment distinctly unfun. So I've given that the big sell. I've given that the medium sell, and then also taketh away. And Denis Shapovalov against Nicolas Jarry.
Yeah. I mean,
Maybe
if
fun.
I'm not into that, then no one is.
Are you into that?
I'm always into Nicolas Jarry for the bit.
Okay. Yeah, but any others to throw in there as fun first rounds?
I think I saw Korda, Davidovich, Fokina.
Yeah.
I mean, Davidovich Fokina hasn't been all that fun this year, but Korda's interesting because Korda is in the Rublev Tsitsipas section, and I keep thinking that Korda on grass should fit really well, and we've seen little signs of that. So I've sort of got my eye on Korda. Oh, and I've just seen above that in the draw Musetti Lestien.
Okay. I mean, even I'm struggling to get excited about that.
Oh,
Really?
Yeah.
I thought you were always excited about Constant Lestien.
Yeah. I don't know. He's not been the fun time that I thought he would be of late. So he's got to win me back,
Who did Feast? Feast got Dominic Stricker.
yeah.
I haven't thought about him for a year.
Since the
He
US
has been
Open.
injured.
He's been
Right.
injured.
He's
That's
been
why
quite
then.
badly injured, I think.
And the winner of that probably plays Hurkacz.
Okay.
Bublik plays Jakub Mensik.
Okay, yeah.
I'm reaching here.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Actually, I think Arnaldi Tiafoe will be a good watch. I think.
Yeah, I do
I
as
think
well.
you'll be into a fourth set and enjoying that.
I really like watching Arnaldi.
Me too. Look, generally I like watching Tiafoe,
Yeah,
but it's
just
it's
this
been
year.
tough. It's been tough recently. He had a disappointing loss here last year when there was sort of big expectations of him externally and internally from himself. And it just feels, this 12 months on, we're expecting him to lose early. It's really tough.
I felt like it summed up the draw, and it was a bit of a snore, really. The whole men's draw for the first few rounds, when all this concern about who Hubert Hurkacz would end up playing in the first round, and he draws Radu Albot. And I thought, okay, well, that's that's not really what we expected, is it?
Yeah. I mean, look, generally boring draws tend to make for good latter stages of
Belting
tournaments,
second
right?
weeks.
You
Yeah.
don't tend to be able to have both, do you? Like a chaotic, fun, sizzling opening few days and a great crescendo in week two. Generally, there is some kind of trade-off there. And as I say, look, there are going to be matches in the opening rounds that surprise us. Like, there are going to be good matches. It's just, on paper, they don't involve the big names.
Yeah.
But fun times will be had, folks. Please tune in.
Please listen.
Yeah,
Tune in
please
anyway.
do tune into the show. None of the events taking place this week have yet reached their conclusion, but a few results for you. As I said, Donna Vekic through to the final in Bad Homburg, where she will play Diana Schneider. Vekic beat Tomova today, and Schneider beat Emma Navarro. In Eastbourne, Daria Kazatkina will play Leila Fernandez in the final. we'll be trying to watch that tomorrow. Kasatkina beat Paulini today in 3 sets, and Fernandez beat Madison Keys. Big wins both those, I think. The Eastbourne men's final will be Max Purcell against either Taylor Fritz or Alexander Vukic. They are playing right now. And then
Fritz has just won.
Max Purcell against Taylor Fritz. Great. Top seed Fritz. I mean, he needs to be winning that, doesn't he? Needs to be winning that tournament. That's the over-under for him. And he's reached the final, so he's nearly there. And as I said, Monfils let Matt down in Mallorca earlier on today. So the final there will be Alejandro Tabilo against Sebastian Offner, who beat possible best player in the world, Paul Job. So Offner against Monfils in the final. Tabilo. Sorry.
Just to rub it in.
Sorry. Right, let's start to reach our crescendo, shall we? Via by asking you one more time to hit that like and subscribe button. I've got it in bold here at the end of the agenda. Just a note. It's I've aggressively written it to myself so that I can aggressively pass that message on to you. And also a reminder that we will be back same time tomorrow, 7:30, and probably the same time on Sunday, unless England have been taken to a dull 0-0 draw through normal time and extra time, and it goes to penalties, and we are subjecting ourselves to that horror, in which case we might push the show back just by a few minutes, but probably 7:30, and if not 7:30, then soon after. Watch this space, we'll keep you posted, but definitely 7:30 tomorrow for our Media Day show. We have our Wimbledon mascot. That mascot is Maverick, a 16-month-old German short-haired pointer who lives in Georgia. Hello, Maverick. We have our mascots. I have the dearly departed Darwin. David has Francis. Matt has Hyder and Soma. We have Billie Jean, who's sponsored by Billie Jean King, and Alana Kloss. Hello, Billie Jean, if you're watching. Squirrel. We have our top folks and executive producers. They are Jamie, Jeff, Greg, and Chris. Hello, we salute you. And Matt, we have shout-outs.
We have Sarah Navani in Seattle, Washington.
Right, Sarah. Sounds like a tennis name, that, doesn't it? If, Sarah Navani was in the draw right now, I would not bat an eyelid.
You've managed not to say home of the Seattle Seahawks, David.
Oh.
Which is what you usually say when Seattle comes up. What do we know about Sarah?
Sarah has 2 dogs.
We know that we like Sarah.
Do we know what type?
No, but we do know they're called Francie and Smokey.
Oh, I like that.
Yes.
Is this a Sarah with an H or without an H?
With
an H. There are more tennis Sarahs without an H. So I'm going to go, once again, Sarah Ballwell.
Never fails.
No.
Yeah, very good.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you, Sarah.
We've got Jose Angelico in
a great name.
Queluz, which is near Lisbon, Portugal.
Oh,
I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly.
I definitely think the louche is right.
Mm.
I'm going to assume it's all right, Matt. You are a linguist, after all.
I once interviewed
Here we go.
Jose Mourinho at Queen's. Remember that?
I do.
And he told me that he shed a tear when Andy Murray won Wimbledon.
It's a good line you got there.
Yeah. Very proud of that interview. And now it's also given us a shout out, tenuous
10
link.
Tennis Joses.
I've just given you Jose Mourinho at Queen's talking about Andy Murray.
Jose Acasuso.
That's good. That's good.
Let's leave it there.
Thank you, Jose.
And finally, we have Hazel Thomas, who is in Fort Worth, Texas. Hazel says location of the 1992 Davis Cup final and the 2022 WTA finals more recently.
What I know about Fort Worth from the staging of the WTA finals there is that they definitely don't want to be confused with Dallas.
No, we got
a lot of emails
about that, didn't we?
We got correspondence about that.
Not off.
Yeah.
And Hazel, like Hazel Whiteman.
Yes.
of Whiteman Cup fame.
Yes.
And of coming up in our Ted Tinling Tennis Relived episode.
It was a bit of a tough scene for Hazel Whiteman in that episode.
Yeah, it's definitely not Hazel Whiteman Relived, is it? It's not one for Hazel Whiteman
Was that because
fans.
Ted Tinling
Took against her.
Yes, that was right.
Yeah, it's a great show, folks. If you're a friend
you
of
want
the
to
pod
listen to that, it's great fun.
and you haven't listened, go and get it. Go and get it out of the archives. If you'd like to become a friend, then the link to do that, as always, is in our show notes. Thank you, Hazel. Thank you, Jose. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you to all of our friends of the Tennis Podcast. Thank you to Wimbledon for having us. Thank you to the Wimbledon shop for giving me my favourite jumper and for keeping me warm and hydrated and cushioned. I'm sitting on an inflatable cushion, which I actually think might change my life.
Yes, I've been on a mission to get Catherine an inflatable waist cushion since the Australian Open, when you saw one out in the wild and decided that you wanted it.
Someone had a belt with a pump on it that they could inflate, and it created a lumbar support pillow, which I thought was the best invention I'd ever seen. But
it does involve me bringing up the conversation in Spanish, and I don't know the Spanish for inflatable waist cushion.
I haven't been able to find the magic combination of words to put into Google to be able to find that item, so we're relying on. Anyway, I don't need it anymore because I've got an inflatable cushion from the Wimbledon shop, and for that I'm very grateful indeed. Folks, we will be back at 7:30 tomorrow with our Media Day show. We'll be back at 7:30 on Sunday with our big preview show, and then every day of the championships we will be right here live from Wimbledon, reviewing the day's play and looking ahead to the next one. We are the Tennis Podcast. We are thrilled to be here, and we will see you and speak to you tomorrow.